We welcome everybody who is also appearing virtually. So this is the Sandag Board of Directors meeting, and it is Friday, September 9, 2022. And before I move forward with the agenda, I would like to ask our interpreter how to access interpretation services. Ruth?
Yes, thank you. This is an announcement for on-site participants in hybrid Zoom meetings. If you're joining us in the Sandag boardroom and need interpretation into Spanish, please check out a receiver from the receptionist on the 7th floor. Simply hold the earpiece to your ear and the interpreter will come on automatically. Buenos días. Si se ha unido a la reunión de hoy en la sala de juntas de Sandag y necesita interpretación al español, por favor diríjase a la recepción del piso 7 y solicite un receptor. Simplemente sostenga el auricular junto a su oído y la interpretación comenzará automáticamente. The following instructions are for people joining the meeting remotely. I will repeat the announcement in English. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular o tableta, presione los puntos suspensivos, luego Interpretation y luego el idioma. Gracias. To use the Zoom interpreting feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are located. Click on the interpretation icon, the world icon, and select English as your language. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone or tablet, please press the ellipses, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a lot of business to get through today, so I'm going to take a few things out of order. We'll be taking non-agenda comments at the end of the meeting today. And to start with, we'll have a presentation from the Low Sand Realignment Project team. So before I hand it over to them, we have a special guest with us who has had a big part in what we're going to hear about today. So I'd like to hand it over to Deanna Spain from Senator Tony Atkins' office. We invite you to come up to the front here, Deanna. Welcome.
Good morning. It's nice to be back after a couple years away. I'm here today representing Senator Atkins, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. It's such an important day for all of us in the region because of moving forward on the Low Sand project. The state was excited about being able to fund this project. It is of such significance not only to our region, but to the state itself and to not only our economy, but the state's economy and our ability to move within California. I'd like to make sure that you know that it was because of the steps taken by Sandag and Sandag's excellent staff over the years to educate not only the region, but several of the state agencies on exactly what it is that this project will do and has already started doing in terms of meeting the transportation needs and the economic needs of California and our region. And it's because of that task force that you put together and the volumes of background equipment and background reports and documents that you shared so willingly to the public and to the state and the federal agencies so that they knew what your plan was all along and were able to provide funding to help make it a reality. So this first step of getting off of the bluffs is critical. As we at the state are dealing with sea level rise and climate change, so are you too in providing the services that you need for the region. And Tony was pleased to be able to work so hard on getting the funding for this project. And the first $300 million will do so much to move this forward and actually make a real difference in transportation for our region. So thank you very much. She wishes she could be here, but you know, she's torn in so many different ways these days and has to be in multiple places at the same time. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to the presentation.
Well, thank you, Deanna, and thank you for all that you personally have done for this project and many projects in this county. We really appreciate your really very hard work and your expertise. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Greg Gastelum to take it from here with the Sandag team.
There we go. Good morning, Chair Blake-Spear and board members and the rest of our attendees. My name is Greg Gastelum. I'm a principal engineer here at Sandag, and I'm part of our engineering construction division. I am so excited to represent our low sand team here with me this morning. We have Danny V, who is leading our planning studies for the low sand corridor, and as well as Ariana Zerneden, who is a part of our finance team. We are ready and mobilizing our engineering teams, a lot of them from our Midcoast team, to continue our success and delivery of our next phase of the project as we move forward from our planning efforts. So with that, I'd like to let Danny go forward with the presentation, and then we're ready to answer any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Greg. This is a momentous day for the region and for the state of California, as we ask you today to accept $300 million in state funding to advance the realignment of the low sand corridor and ultimately move the tracks off of the Del Mar Bluffs. I've personally been working on the low sand corridor for the past 16 years and have seen tremendous progress in replacing old bridges and double tracking. But this award is truly special. It's larger than any other single award that Sandag has received on the low sand corridor, and that's something that we should really celebrate today. You've heard a lot about this in the news, and today I'm going to share with you where we are right now in the project and how Sandag plans to use the $300 million over the next 5 years. So the state's investment, it makes it all possible. Allows Sandag to move forward into our next phase, advancing engineering and environmental. And furthermore, this funding allows us to be extremely competitive in leveraging federal infrastructure funds. So this state money is going to be used as non-federal match to get as much money out of Washington as possible so that we can help fully fund this project. And one of the first tasks that's starting is to reconvene the Low Sand Executive Task Force, which was instrumental in securing the state funding, this initial state funding. And the key focus of the Executive Task Force going forward is going to be looking at how we can identify future funding to fully fund this project all the way through construction. So we really have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. The tracks on the Del Mar Bluffs is a real problem. It's been there since the tracks were built. As you can see in the photo, in 1941, there were heavy rains that caused a bluff collapse and resulting in the Great Train Wreck. As recently, and even as recently as last year, in 2021, we had a century-old retaining wall collapse, and that ended up shutting down the rail corridor for weeks. With rising sea levels, increasing rates of coastal erosion, and more and severe storms associated with the impacts of climate change are all exacerbating the problem. We've seen the bluffs receding at 4 to 6 inches per year and have spent the last 20 years doing short-term stabilization projects and emergency repairs. The vulnerable section of the tracks is a threat to the long-term viability of our infrastructure and public safety. The time is upon us to actually realize a long-term solution with a realignment of the corridor. The Low Sand Corridor is critically important for our region. It stretches 351 miles from San Diego to San Luis Obispo, carrying commuter, intercity, and freight trains. It's also the nation's second busiest intercity rail corridor. Sandag's role in the corridor is that we are responsible for overseeing the long-term planning and managing construction and improvements along the 60 miles of the Low Sand Corridor within San Diego County. And since 2008, we've added 15.6 miles of double track, going from just under 50% double track to where we are today at 75% double track. We've invested in many double tracking projects and bridge replacements and stabilizing the bluffs, and now is the time and opportunity to protect those prior investments, eliminate a key bottleneck, and build a safe and world-class railroad. Oops, didn't advance. The Low Sand Corridor is significant for our region, the state, and the nation, serving over 8 million passengers and over $1 billion in goods annually throughout the corridor wide. And Low Sand is vitally important to the projected growth of goods movement to serve that growing demand at the Port of San Diego and goods coming across the international border. Freight trains and the passenger trains are keeping car trips off of our congested I-5 and I-15 corridors. It is our only viable rail connection to outside the region. And furthermore, the Department of Defense has recognized the Low Sand Corridor in San Diego County as part of the strategic rail corridor network, which is vital to support military readiness at all of our military bases. And with this realignment, we have an opportunity to reimagine the rail corridor, improving safety, capacity, speed, and not only solve the problems of today with the bluffs, but build something resilient and consistent with the transit leap vision that's identified in the 2021 regional plan. The San Diego Regional Rail Alignment Study is our current planning study. It's corridor-wide in scope, and that identifies how the Low Sand Corridor can move beyond that suburban-focused park and ride commuter rail to a real viable mobility option that is safer, faster, and more frequent than anything that we have today. And one component of this planning study specifically focuses on realignment alternatives in Del Mar and Miramar. And it's this initial planning work that's positioned Sandag to advance the realignment work in Del Mar. So let's just recap where we've been. So starting in 2017, we had 5 initial alignments that were identified. And then when we started this current planning study in 2020, we took those initial 5 alignments and refined those to meet the higher speed vision identified in the regional plan. Then in 2021, when we last came to the board, we presented an update sharing how we developed criteria and how we ranked those options, narrowing from 5 alignments down to 2 alignments based on several technical factors. And all this initial work shows that a tunnel is our best option to achieve the outputs of improved speed, capacity, safety, and resiliency. And then since 2021, Sandag and our key partners along the railroad have been refining these 2 alignment alternatives based on engineering, construction, and operational considerations. We've also taken some initial stakeholder input and I've looked at refining our study to reduce the impacts to the community. And we're continuing to engage with NCTD and MTS, BNSF, cities of Del Mar and cities of San Diego, and many other parties to help shape the study outcomes. So we are right now advancing the conceptual tunnel work, identifying what the general footprint is, how the ventilation systems, the tunnel configuration, what the tunnel portals will look like. And this work is ongoing and will be complete by the end of this year and into early 2023. Oops, that went one too far. Back it up. Okay, there we go. So we are making a commitment to informing and engaging the public with opportunities to learn about the project and provide meaningful and relevant feedback. Starting this month, we are kicking off an education campaign to teach the public about tunneling, as well as to listen to and address concerns that people have, as well as to address misinformation that's out there. And as the planning study is wrapped up, it's perfect timing to coincide with the beginning of the environmental work. And going forward, we also have another opportunity to envision what happens in the railroad right-of-way once the tracks are realigned. We'll be working with NCTD, Del Mar, and the public on what could become of the land once the tracks are vacated and realigned. Lastly, we'll continue to engage the Sandag Board of Directors, policy advisory committees, and the working groups, especially as we begin work on the next environmental phase that's going to have many well-defined decision points in the next few years. And that brings us to our project timeline. So our current phase is the planning and public outreach phase. It's the beginning of the outreach phase that will continue through the life of the project. And this work, as I mentioned, will be wrapping up in 2023, and that's when we will transition into the preliminary engineering and environmental phase. This phase is fully funded and expected to be complete by 2026, which will allow us to begin work on the final design and right-of-way phase. Now, this phase is partially funded, although we are going to be, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking for additional funds to help fully fund the final design and the construction phase that could start in 2028. And if we're successful in finding the rest of the funding, that puts us on track to deliver the project by 2035. Going forward, this state funding allows us to fully commit to moving this project forward through preliminary engineering and environmental clearance. Some of the initial work in early 2023 will be to advance engineering technical studies and biological surveys that will ultimately help us understand and document the environmental impacts of the project. And as Greg mentioned, Sandag's currently gearing up to deliver this project. We're building our team of expert staff, many of whom recently delivered the Midcoast Trolley project, as well as we're leveraging our consultant teams to bring in world-class expertise in tunnel design and construction to help us deliver this project. And I'd just like to reiterate how important this is to the region. It's truly a big win for Sandag, and I'm excited to stop kicking the can on this project and make it a reality. So I want to get to work. So our action today, the Board of Directors is asked to approve an amendment to the FY 2023 Sandag program budget, accepting $300 million in State of California general fund monies in the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program for the advancement of the San Diego to Sorrento Valley Double Track Project, Capital Improvement Project number 1239823.
Well, thank you so much. That was a really interesting presentation, and we're all very excited to move forward as well. So thank you for the presentation today. We're going to go to the public comment first, those who are in the room, and then those who are virtual, and then we'll go to member question and comment. So Francesca, do we have any public comment today?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one public commenter in the room. Catherine Rhodes, you can go ahead and step up to the podium.
Hi, Catherine Rhodes, super excited about this project. So one question, the main question I have is for the right-of-way. If you go underneath the houses, are you going to have to pay anybody in Del Mar to, tunnel underneath their house? Is that a cost, or could you reduce costs by, keeping everything on the public right-of-way? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. If you have an answer to the question, we would all love to hear it. What do we do about right-of-way underneath the ground?
Yeah. So what we've identified is that there will be a subterranean easement that we would need to get for any parcels that the tunnel will go under. So there will be an easement that will need to be acquired, just like any other construction easement that the board gets.
And so is that an eminent domain type process, or is that a... What's the...
Yes, it would be. It is a compensable take generally. One of our team members worked on the LA Metro Purple Line project. They did a lot of that, and that was not without some issues, but they were able to get it done. So that will be something that we'll be ready to support.
Okay, thank you. And Francesca, is that all of the comment?
That is the end of the in-person public comment, but we do have 2 hands raised on Zoom. The first commenter is Corinna Contreras, who will be followed by Camilla Rang. Corinna, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. My name is Corinna Contreras. I'm here in my capacity as transportation policy advocate for Climate Action Campaign. And I want to applaud you all on this $300 million. I really hope that you move forward with accepting it. The low sand corridor, as was stated in the presentation, and as you all know, is critically important for the region, not only for all the freight that goes through, but also the passenger service. And if we are not able to maintain this strategic corridor, there will be absolutely no way to reach our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. So, we are racing against the clock as we see the climate crisis continuing to get worse and worse, the Del Mar Bluffs continuing to get closer to collapse. Time is of the essence here. So I do applaud you all. And in the group yesterday, the working group on this project, it was stated that by 2035, other critical areas besides the Del Mar Bluff area will also be completed. So, San Diego County, I applaud you on having such a comprehensive planning and the stakeholder outreach. Just continue to reach out to CBOs and different stakeholders here in the community. But thank you so much for the presentation. And I can only hope that Orange County is taking this as seriously as San Diego County is. But the sooner, the better. But thank you so much. This is very exciting. Oh, and I want to say one last thing. On the right-of-way that is, if there is a realignment, which we all hope that, that will come to fruition very soon, the right-of-way, the public right-of-way that's left behind, for that to be utilized for active transportation would be critical and a great community enhancement for this area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And our next commenter will be Camilla Rang, who will be followed by Mike Bullock. Camilla, you can go ahead.
Thank you. This is Camilla Rang, Del Mar. And thank you, Danny, for that fantastic presentation. Very good. So, of course, I support this incredible project. This is a dream coming true. So I looked at the alignments last night, and I see that the I-5 option has been taken off the table. I think everyone would appreciate if there was a way to at least put it back to investigate whether it still would be possible. The alignment, I think the one that would underneath Camino Del Mar, where it comes out over by the lagoon, is still very close to the ocean. It doesn't feel very sustainable. Like in 50 years, it's probably going to be completely exposed again. And we have to do another realignment. And a lot of people are worried about the tunnel under their houses, but the I-5 alignment, if there was a possible solution, I think that would be very much appreciated by the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mike Bullock, who will be followed by the person with the phone number ending in 899.
Yeah, good morning, Honorable Chair and board members. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Of course, the right vote here is a yes, and get this going as fast as possible. I was happy to hear that the presenter talked about sea level rise. He talked about extreme weather and that is aggravating the situation. And we all looked at the map and we saw the map go right by the Del Mar Fairgrounds and so on and so forth. And I think what we all need to understand, and what the presenter should have said, is that we have a code red climate emergency. That's what the Secretary General of the UN says. And the reason we have that is because we have a very large reduction in greenhouse gas that we have to achieve by 2030. So the focus of Sandag should not be 2035. That's a throwback to an earlier understanding, and now that's become a misunderstanding. Now we have to focus at 2030, and we have to focus on what is required on the part of the industrialized world. And the speaker should have said that lots of things are at risk. We're assuming we're not going to destabilize the climate. And that's a fairly optimistic assumption, and it should not be unstated. The fact is we are facing a disaster of unimaginable dimensions. And, you know, who's to say what could happen to the Del Mar Fairgrounds and the tracks that are between the Del Mar Fairgrounds and the ocean? We may find that we have storms every 5 years that flood all of that, and severe waves coming in there. We are at 420 parts per million. We don't know what this climate is capable of. You know, at 5:20, I walked outside my garage door with my bicycle. I was going to go swimming. And I said one word as soon as I stepped outside, and I can't tell you what it is because it's an obscenity, and it was pretty loud. The reason I said that is because it was really, really hot. It was over 90 degrees. At that time of the morning, sometimes it's 70, sometimes it's a little over 70, usually it's in the 60s. I could tell it was over 90. You know, it's been 120 degrees in Canada, 120 degrees. That's at 420 parts per million, and we're driving it up every year. And based on Sandag's attitude towards this, you're regressing backwards. You're getting less and less concerned, you know. And so I don't know where this assumption comes from, all this optimism. I wish I had it. I wish I could join you. I'm very envious of your optimism. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be the person with the phone number ending in 899. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, this is Mary D. Good morning. I just wanted to say that I'm concerned about the seismic implications. When I heard subterranean easement, I'm sure the homeowners would too. So I think it would be very beneficial that you would go ahead and let people know, assure them that the seismic considerations are being taken into. And then when I see the map as well, I think the I-5 table or route should actually still be on the table, at least for consideration. The pink one that I'm looking at by Camino del Mar, that still seems precariously close. My other concern is all of this does parallel the Rose Canyon Fault. So any type of seismic considerations, particularly for homeowners who you're going to tunnel under their house, they really need to be assured that that's going to be addressed in your plan. Thank you so much.
Chair, that concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any member comment or question? And if, oh, okay, is that the vice chair? San Diego A? Okay, San Diego A.
Getting used to pushing the 0 button to speak again since I got used to Zoom. I just wanted to express my appreciation to Senator Atkins. Dana Spain, thank you for what you do. We all know you're an indispensable part of Senator Atkins' team, but I definitely want to remark and lift up the fact that a $300 million allocation does not happen with great frequency, and it doesn't happen without extraordinary leadership. So please extend the City of San Diego and this board's appreciation to the Senator for her tremendous work, mindful of the fact that her time in Sacramento is not forever. So we're grateful she's there, and we think we got 2 more budgets with her, right? So let's continue to try and bring home the bacon for big projects that make transformational change in our region. And I would say, obviously there are coastal cities here that are deeply and directly impacted, so I'm sure they'll have comments or questions. But Danny, may I just say I appreciate your urgency. I'm a very impatient person, so I like the idea of getting things going. I still don't like the timeline for 2032, did you say? 35. But you know, I get that these big projects and they're extremely complex, but I appreciate the animation that you brought in your presentation and a real desire to deliver this project. Obviously, the climate challenges are real. A day like today, we recognize this is an existential concern, even today along that rail line. But the optimism that was inquired about is the fact that we have these resources to get us through these next multiple phases of this project. Again, wouldn't have been possible without Senator Atkins' leadership. And Deanna, you were very generous, and I think right to point out the work of Sandag's staff to put us in a position to compete successfully for these dollars. This kind of collaboration is how we fund our regional transportation
plan. And again, it's extraordinary leadership. So urgency, leadership, Bucks, this is a good day. It was said a no-brainer. Yes, I'm happy to make a motion to amend the 2023 program budget and accept these $300 million with a tremendous gratitude to Senator Atkins.
So I'll second that motion. Delmar.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments, Vice Chair. So I think that reflects all of our comments. Mayor Huebner.
Yes, thank you. As a neighbor city, very, very supportive. As a member of this region, extremely supportive, and the state of California as well, of course. I have a question. The second one, which is the eastern alignment, it looks like it's partially in Del Mar and partially in the city of San Diego. Is there a percentage, which line, how much of that line is in San Diego and how much is in Del Mar? Because the part toward Carmel Valley?
Yeah, so and keep in mind that the project, the tunnel is about half the project. The other half is in Los Penasquitos Lagoon and double tracking through the lagoon. So all of the lagoon is within the city of San Diego. And then of the eastern alignment, probably half of the tunnel is within the city of San Diego and the other half is in Del Mar.
Okay, so obviously there'll be outreach to those residents as well.
Of course.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
Good. Well, this is an amazing day, something we've been looking forward to for a really long time, and I'll certainly be supportive of the motion.
Well, thank you. Let's go ahead and vote.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Do we need to push?
you have to sign up to speak by pushing
I did.
0. Oh, okay.
I did as well.
All right, well, I see you. Councilmember Gasterlin, did you want to speak?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, there, okay. All right, I did not understand this. This is my maybe
I
second
actually still don't
in-person
see your
meeting.
name if you just did it.
I hit yes, nothing happened. 0.
Yeah, so don't push the blue part. You push the, right above the blue is the button.
All right, there we go.
There you are.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Technical difficulties. I want to make several comments. One is, kind of representing the people of Del Mar, representing the fence fighters, representing the bluff savers, the beach community, Del Mar residents. I bring these words here after a lot of discussion over many, many months with many, many people. The universal message that I'm hearing is gratitude to Tony Atkins' office and to the governor and to our local leadership for making this happen. A sense and a spirit of cooperation. There's a genuine desire that this relocation happen and that we find solutions to whatever problems we find before us. There's also a sense of hesitancy, concern, and worry about trains going underneath a home. And, I've spent some time with the Sandag engineers. My fellow council member Tracy Martinez and I went up to LA. We visited the 2-mile tunnel there, and we viewed the technology that reduced the vibration underneath the Disney concert hall to 0, literally 0. So I'm hopeful that there will be technologies used that will make sure that this tunnel has little impact as it goes under homes. And that's going to be part of this $300 million. So we need to acknowledge that hesitancy and that worry. One thing that came out of the LA visit that was really reassuring is that the Del Mar tunnel will really be 2 parallel tunnels with little connectors in between them. And because it is so far underground and there is no need to have a station in the middle of the hill of Del Mar, 100 feet underground, there is actually no need for venting other than at the entrance and the exit. And so our Sandag's engineers are keenly aware that we need to move those exits at each end away from where people live, because there will be huge, gigantic fans that will be at each entrance, and they'll need to turn on at certain times. So again, the engineering is on this. And one of the questions I have for you is, could you just briefly talk about the consultant that's been hired already to take a look at moving those entrances away from homes and more toward places like the pump station, as one of the public comments from District 1 in City of San Diego mentioned, and also on the other side near JDB. Perhaps you could say a few words.
Yeah, absolutely. So for at least the planning study that we have underway, we do have a consultant, HDR, and they have several sub-consultants that have national experts that have delivered tunnels all over North America and the world. There's the issues with the impacts of the portals. I mean, obviously that's going to be the focus. That's going to be the most visible thing. And we need to do some additional work to figure out how we can potentially minimize all those impacts and mitigate for any impacts that come up. And that's all going to be taken forward in the next phase that Greg's going to be leading once we get into that environmental phase. And we'll have all the answers to those questions about what the noise is, or is there alternatives to where that portal location can be? Does it have to be right there? Can you move it somewhere else? That's something that we're going to figure out in that next phase.
Yeah. So moving on with a few more comments. The two alignments that are the top two right now are the high-speed alignment that goes deep under the hill, skirts the edge of Crest Canyon, goes under Del Mar Heights Road, and comes out right around Portofino Road. And the general sense that I get in Del Mar is that that's the preferred alignment, with the sense that the alignment that would go just to the east of Camino Del Mar would be more disruptive. As we heard from Ms. Rang, where it comes out is actually down out toward where the lagoon meets the ocean. It would actually come out under yet more homes. And it's not really clear exactly how that portal, is that portal also under study? And will the two portals be weighed carefully independently of other factors?
100%, yes.
Good. Now, 2030, I fully agree with Mike Bullock encouraging us to look at 2030. When I saw this presentation in preliminary form last week, I asked for the word by in front of the year 2035. And, I didn't take note, but I presume it was in there. And I'm wondering if there's a good way, as we're messaging, to push harder and harder and harder for closer to 2030, more like 2030 than 2035, but recognizing that we have a standard error here. We don't know what we're facing. Perhaps you could comment on the feasibility of 2030.
Excuse me for just a minute, if I may, Chair. We definitely want to bring an item in more detail on all of this, and we've done a little bit more work, Councilmember Gasterlin. And so I think, the team here wants to answer as many questions. We still have very limited information because we haven't done the detailed review. So I just want to make sure that we're not saying things here that are like set in stone forever, because we need to take public input. We need to do the studies. And that's what this $300 million is really going to help us do.
So I'll leave that as a comment rather than a question. And then something that people have brought up over and over and over is the syncing of the I-5 alignment. And so I think as we come forward, we need to make it crystal clear what the criteria were that set the I-5 alignment behind the other two that are on the table, especially given the obvious problems with the so-called Camino Del Mar, adjacent to Camino Del Mar alignment for so many reasons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hsu.
Thank you. Glad to know that we can mitigate there I am. I'm glad to know that we can mitigate the effects of homes being, or the effects of the tunneling underneath homes. Unfortunately, we actually can mitigate, but don't mitigate the effects of freeways going through our neighborhoods. I have some quick points to make. I always like this opportunity to mention that the Los Angeles corridor should end in Mexico, not in San Diego. So if you could change the map in the future. There was another tunnel project, the Miramar Tunnel, that was brought up many years ago. And the study was done. And I hope we can reinforce the cost-benefit factor of building tunnels rather than freeways, and what we can do for the cost of transportation as well as pollution. So I hope that's a part of this study and part of your EIR. And with that, we emphasize that. And lastly, I really want to thank the leadership at Sandag for creating the task force, the local leaders here that promoted it, and of course our state legislators and Senator Atkins. We need to do this again for another tunnel, the Miramar Tunnel, so we can reduce the travel time. We need to clone the folks we have right here on our staff to do another tunnel, also by 2030, the Miramar Tunnel, double track the entire system, so that people in North County can not only pollute less as they travel less to San Diego, but to save money, as much as $350 per person per month. That's the cost savings by having this alternative rather than driving. So I hope we can do that quickly and put this on the agenda. I know Senator Atkins has many priorities, but Ann, if you could push forward, we need another tunnel as well, and staff to build it, and we need to do it by 2030. So I hope the technology is there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. North County Transit District Chair Edson.
Thank you. It's, of course, always nice to be on the receiving end of funding. Many thanks to Senator Atkins, CalSTA, and Sandag staff for everyone's successful efforts. The NCTD Board of Directors has long expressed support for moving the tracks off of the Del Mar Bluffs. This relocation project, as we've heard in the presentation, will provide long-term resiliency against the impacts of climate change. But it's also critical that shovel-ready state of good repair and capacity-enhancing projects along the corridor, also impacted by sea level rise, continue to be advanced in a timely manner. These shovel-ready projects are truly the first phase of realignment. They include the San Dieguito Lagoon Double Track Phase 2 at $233.4 million, the Bataquitos Lagoon Double Track at $104 million, and the Eastbrook to Shell Double Track at $70 million. These three essential shovel-ready projects lack any source of local matching funds that can be leveraged with federal dollars to advance construction. I look forward to Sandag's enhanced collaboration with NCTD to advance these less sexy, but still significant needs on the low sand corridor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the comments from board members. And with that, we'll go ahead and vote.
Thank you. For the City of Carlsbad, Mayor Pro Tem Blackburn.
Don't we do it with our...
My apologies. I'm still in the old world.
No worries.
And that item does pass unanimously with those members present.
Okay, exciting day. 300 million. Thank you again, Pro Tem Atkins. All right, next we're moving to our CEO report, which will be delivered today by Colleen and Ray. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. So welcome back, everyone. It's great to see you all. Hassan sends his regards. He is with family in Jordan and will be back early next week. So I know he is anxious to get back to work here with all of you as well. We hope you enjoyed a break from our meetings. And that didn't keep the team here from doing a lot of work to try to jumpstart what we need to complete before the end of the calendar year. I'm sure you're all aware of the news that the California Air Resources Board did approve our 2021 regional plan. That's a huge accomplishment for the region. I will tell you that the other regions in the state of California, their plans are still on the desk of the Air Resources Board waiting to be approved. And it's critical to have this approval so that we can actually get the $300 million like the funding for the low sand project. All the Senate Bill 1 funds, that goes to transit agencies, many of you for your local streets and roads. The compliant plan is critical to keeping those funds flowing. So that said, we're very pleased to have that plan approved. We also are going to be bringing forward an item to you at the end of this month, so your next meeting, to talk about how we expedite an update to our current plan to address the road usage charge. And this last July, we brought forward a report that laid out an approach, and we've had feedback that that's just too long of a time frame. So we're going to bring back several options. We're working very closely with all of our attorneys to make sure that the options that we bring forward to you are legally sound and that we can address the direction that you gave us both in July and when the plan was approved in December. So just wanted to mention that to you all. We are also just really pleased to get the funding from Senator Atkins. It's partnerships with our elected leaders at the state that really make all of this work. We've had great partnerships as well as we've continued to make progress on the Otay Mesa East project. We had state officials down over the last several months over the summer, and really, really pleased to announce the groundbreaking. We had Senator Padilla with us just last week, and so some of you were there with us in that meeting, and so all of this is helping us to get the funding that we need to put in place to make that project a reality. And something we'll be sending out later to you today with respect to Otay Mesa East is the revenue sharing agreement. So this is the draft agreement between Sandag and Mexico and how we will share the revenue that will come out of the toll road to help support that facility. So it's a super technical, very, very technical document. So once we send that out, if any of you want briefings or want more detail on that, please do contact us. We're happy to do that. That will be coming to this board in October, so we'll actually be asking you to approve that. So we just want to make sure you're well aware of all the implications. I really want to thank our Council General for their collaboration with us in helping to pull all of this work together. And then once that's signed, we will be able to have an official signing with Mexico later this fall. So big accomplishments there, and huge thank you to the team and all of you who've helped to move that project forward. The other thing I wanted to mention is that on October 9th, we are going to be hosting a one-day event. It's a Sandag community event where we want to get out and talk about all the different projects that we're doing. It's going to be held at Ryoko Park, and this will also highlight some of the work we're doing in public-private partnerships. So the 3 projects that we're moving forward with the request for innovative proposals. So these are the public-private partnerships where we're talking about bringing the trolley across the border, how we deploy innovative technologies to better manage our highway system. So that's really in alignment with the 5 big moves in the regional plan. So that's the next operating system, so how that can be deployed more quickly, and then pilot flexible fleet projects. And so those will be featured at the event as well, and we hope that many of you will be there. There'll be a lot more to come on all of that. I also wanted to just mention that work is progressing on the airport connection, a central mobility hub. We had a workshop last night. It was a virtual workshop with many of the parties around that, the facility that we're talking about, just to get everyone up to speed and where we are. We've been working closely with our partners at the port and the airport and convening that working group to really make sure that we're pulling together all the details so that we have a solid analysis to present to this board this fall on what the different options are and how we can proceed with that work. One other thing I wanted to mention, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, they have the authority over the state funds that are coming to the region for housing. And so there's $43 million that will be coming from the state of California to this region. We have leveraged that with our Smart Growth Incentive Program funds that we hope to be able to have about $100 million here available to the region to help implement our regional housing needs assessment and to allow you all to be able to do that in your local jurisdictions. So we got the approval with our first piece of that by Housing and Community Development. There's more to come. That's definitely an area where the Regional Planning Committee will be focusing their work over the next few months, and really excited about that funding, helping to really realize what some of the mobility hubs can look like with more housing. In other news, the data science team just launched what we call an open data portal. So there's a whole bunch of additional information that has never been available in the region before to help all of us do regional planning as well as your local planning efforts. And so this is in alignment with data that's coming at a national level, even international level, and different measurements that we can use to sort of monitor our progress. And Ray, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, but we're excited about that launch, and it's a ton of work to get there, but I think this will be a great feature for us to all have available. Anything you want to add?
Sure. I mean, one of the goals that we had set out for the data science department is really to become the data clearinghouse and the gold standard of data for the San Diego region. And we've been working extensively at coming up with measures that all jurisdictions can use. So we're using some sustainable development goals that are basically defined by the United Nations, and they're used globally. And we've always created our own measures here as we needed to, but now switching to these type of global measures, what we're able to do is to compare ourselves not only locally to see what's happening over time, but we can compare ourselves to other regions and see what they're doing well in terms of these very important goals. And so all that data is available. And the way that we put the portals together is to allow the jurisdictions to look at the data at a jurisdictional level. So that was always one of our goals, is that we can always look at it not just at a region level, but also sub-regionally, so that we're all looking at the same data and able to compare across different regions.
Yeah, okay, great. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention that every few years we have to go through a process to look at what languages all the work that Sandag does needs to be translated into, so that we can engage the public. We've just completed what's called our language assistance plan. So that's now in place, and just wanted to report that out. And then probably the most important thing I wanted to report is that today is Gustavo Gallardo's birthday, I understand. So happy birthday, Gustavo. We hope you have a great day. Hopefully it's not one of these days I'll always remember my such and such birthday when the hurricane hit San Diego, but we'll see. Anyway, that concludes the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, go ahead and push the button, and then I'll call on you in the order you pop up. So Councilmember Rodriguez, go ahead. We're going to take actually, I'm sorry. We're going to take public comments first. Are there public comments on the CEO's report?
Yes, we do have one in person and two virtual.
Okay, and then we'll go to member comments.
Catherine Rhodes, you can go ahead. Thank you.
I want to say virtually I attended the Central Mobility Hub last night. And it was fabulous. So many great questions were answered. Hopefully it'll go up on YouTube and you guys could see all the great questions that were answered. And so one question I've been bringing up, since 2009 is, how much money has Sandag received from the airport? And I got the answer finally. It's $0. $0 you've received from the airport, even though in 2019, Sandag, a lot of you, and the airport authority had a big meeting, a big press conference saying, look at us, we're getting $350 million from the airport. So they're going to finally pay some money for mitigation. And that would include mitigation for Caltrans for their on and off ramps off the I-5 that were promised to us as part of the rental car center. And so again, you have $0. So what's the solution? The solution first is, and then, I asked the question, why aren't you getting any money? And Sandag staff told me it's because we don't have a project yet. And I was like, you do have a project. You have a CEQA project that could be paid for by airport revenues. So how do you get the airport revenue? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to put the Central Mobility Hub by the port there, and then you have to have your, your connections for the airport connectivity, the line, and you have to put it on something called an airport layout plan. That has to be approved by the airport authority. Then it goes up to the airport district officer in Los Angeles, and he approves it. And once that's approved, you could get money for the airport, for everything. So all the money that Sandag paid for the airport project should also always only be paid for by the airport. That's their mitigation. So I think that $0 for the Central Mobility Hub and the airport connectivity should be paid for by Sandag dollars. Those are all should be paid for by airport dollars. As you know, we have a beautiful, beautiful world-class airport, and it's because they're hoarding funds. They're hoarding funds meant for mitigation for since 2008, actually. So please get the money. Please get the airport to put your Central Mobility Hub and the lines just as a potential project, just like they did for the Intermodal Terminal Center that would be able to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be the person with the name San Diego 350, who will be followed by Mike Bullock.
Good morning. I think that's me. My name is B. Mittermiller, representing San Diego 350. Good morning, Chair Blakespear and members of the board. Welcome back from your August break. As we've been hearing all morning, we are now experiencing a climate crisis. The record-breaking heat of this past week should be enough to shake anyone out of denial and complacency about the reality of climate change. News from around the world is even more terrifying. Our coastal public and private property is being battered by rising sea levels. Business as usual is not enough anymore. Therefore, today I'm speaking in full support of the 2021 Regional Plan and its strategies to lower greenhouse gas emissions and to charge all vehicles for the real cost of their operation on county roads. Opposition to suggestions by the staff is short-sighted and politically motivated, putting businesses and residents at terrible risk. And without an air resources compliant plan, you jeopardize the millions of dollars in government funding that is available. There are plenty of examples of other cities and states that are tolling their roads. Please don't put the people of this county at further risk with your objections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mike Bullock, who will be followed by Steve Gelb, and Steve Gelb will be our final speaker.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair and members of the board. Another outstanding report. It just shows us that you hired a winner, Hassan Agrada. And thank you, Hassan Agrada, for putting Colleen Clemenson where she is. And all of his staff moves have been wonderful. And, you know, all around the state, regional transportation plans were submitted at the same time. The drop dead date was 2021. You guys went right up to the drop dead date like everybody else. So why is yours approved and others not approved? And it just shows again that you hired a winner. And what's sad is that you're not supporting him. You used to support him. There was a meeting where a motion was made to remove the road use charge from the plan, and it failed. It failed with a tally vote. It didn't even need a weighted vote. It failed. That was a very rational decision. And you've moved off of that into a very irrational position. And you won't seem to change. We have no hope if we don't get a means-based road use charge to replace our gas tax. Now think about the gas tax. 1908, Oregon did it. And I'm sure that there were people, politicians who were saying, oh, that's terrible. You can't raise the taxes. We're gonna fight that. There were plenty of Carl DeMaios at the time, but it was a great idea. And it was equitable. Wealthy people own cars, and that gasoline tax taxed people per miles driven as best you could do it. I mean, with the technology, it was a great idea. It was such a good idea that the federal government copied them about 10 years later. I mean, thanks to all the Carl DeMaios and the people that don't want change and that, you know, were promising to stop taxes. We got a gas tax, which was a very rational thing to do. But what was irrational is we didn't have politicians who would keep that tax up to what it needed to be during inflation. And then we got corporate average fuel efficiency went up, mileage went up. We're getting electric cars. It has to be replaced. That's just a rational position. And I just think it's really sad that you're not really helping Hassan Agrada do his job. And, you know, he was approved by, your plan was approved by CARB, so congratulations on that. They should have questioned the environmental impact report. You didn't really talk about climate destabilization. That's an environmental impact. And of course, you're not helping because you're not achieving the 2030 requirement. That's a requirement from science. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker will be Steve Gelb. Steve, you can go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Blakespear and members of the board. I understand that the board backed away from its commitment to study a future road use charge under great public pressure. Unfortunately, the road use charge became radioactive because of all kinds of misinformation. And it was misinformation, frankly, by people who wanted to throw a wrench into the RTP and who don't support the RTP, which has left us in a very difficult situation. And it's a shame because the road use charge is the best alternative to replace the inequitable and dwindling gas tax, which is, in fact, our current road use charge. With the introduction of hybrid and electric cars, the gas tax has become an anachronism. Drivers who can afford fully electric cars pay no gas tax at all, although they contribute to wear and tear of the road network. So the current system is unfair and unsustainable. And as more consumers purchase electric vehicles, gas tax revenue will continue to decline, even as the cost of maintaining roads continues to rise. So you should all remember that the state conducted a road use pilot in 2017 in which they had people give up the gas tax, but instead pay a road use charge. And then they surveyed them, and 73% of the people felt it was more equitable than a gas tax. 81% stated that the road charge model should continue to be researched. 91% were willing to participate in another road use charge pilot, and there was 85% satisfaction. So we need to ask those who attack the idea of a road use charge what their proposal is to replace the disappearing revenues of the gas tax. That should not be the burden placed upon the Sandag staff. It's unfair because there is no other rational and equitable model for doing what we need to do to address climate change. And we do know that cities and states all over the country will be doing this. And in years to come, if we're the one who isn't, will be seen as an anachronism. I understand how difficult the political posturing and demagogue misinformation has been and how difficult it is to stand up to that. But we are giving up something that is really important and crucial for our future. Thank you for listening to me.
Chair, we did have one additional hand that just went up. Is it okay if I take that one as well, or do we need to move on?
Okay, let's take the last hand.
Thank you. Mary D., you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, Mary D. Thank you for taking my quick comment. I just wanted to touch on this last speaker's comment that there is an equitable way. It's called a vehicle registration fee, and you would just go ahead and charge EVs a surplus. You could even do it prorated in equity for marginalized or low-income people. But the way you're doing it now with the RUC is actually social engineering designed to change behavior and get us off the road. You could just charge the vehicle registration fee and get that money back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes the comments.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you for the report. I believe that climate change is real and that humans impact our environment, but there is a lot we must learn about these impacts, and there are differences of opinion from the scientific community on the extent of humans impacting our environment. As a small business owner and farmer, my livelihood is directly dependent on the environment. Solutions to combat climate change need to be done in a smart way that doesn't devastate our economy. We shouldn't ask the residents of San Diego County to solve a global problem. My focus is not helping foreign countries or activists or special interests when I represent my constituents in Oceanside. Because when we hamstring San Diego County's development, we give rise to the thugs of this region to take our place. China is the world's biggest polluter by far. Russia and India are not far behind. If America fulfills all of its climate promises, We will barely put a dent in greenhouse gas emissions. This is because the world's biggest polluters are doing nothing to address global climate change. With respect to the road user charge, which this board was pretty unanimous on removing from the plan, I would just ask that staff and the Sandag chair and co-chair share any and all information on changes, on impacts, on solutions. It is so important to me and my constituents that we are provided regular doses of information on what we're going to do, because dumping a road user charge or a potential tax on my constituents is going to be devastating. It's going to fail at the ballot. And if we're going to work together as a region to combat climate change and do our part, but also not devastate our economy and tax our constituents as we head into a recession, it's important that we are able to communicate these changes and options and not attempt to sweep things under the rug. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Salas.
Thank you very much. I wasn't going to speak to the road use tax, but I'll just put in my 2 cents. I think the intent of those that wanted to take a step back was really to find an equitable way of imposing that road user tax, so that we made sure that the working people that have to use the cars rather than those that are driving by choice, how do you figure that out? I think that was a question. It was not a unanimous rejection of a road user tax, because for all the reasons stated about the diminishing revenues of the road user tax, and that pretty soon we're going to have more and more electric vehicles. There has to be a replacement. There has to be a reasonable and fair replacement. And there has to be a replacement that will protect those that have to travel long distances in order to do the job that makes our life so comfortable. So that's that. But really, I just had a question for Ms. Clemenson. When I heard you state something, I didn't catch the full gist of this, but you mentioned that revenues from the toll road paying for part of the infrastructure for the third border crossing. What is meant by that? Because as far as I know and understand, is that any tolls from the SR 125 at least are supposed to be dedicated to the maintenance and for the payoff of that debt eventually.
So my comment about the revenue sharing is about State Route 11, which is a toll road at the border crossing. And so it's a revenue sharing agreement between Sandag and one of the Mexican agencies on how the revenue from State Route 11 will be shared in order to support the facility.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't about our SR 125. Thank you.
It's good to be vigilant, right? Next, we have Mayor Sotelo Solis.
Well, buenos dias, everyone. Thank you, Chair. Thank you again to staff and Colleen for the presentation. I just had 3 really quick questions. You mentioned on October 9th, it's going to be a presentation on the some of the binational projects. Can you share a little bit more what specifically we're looking to discuss on those days?
So yes, thank you, Mayor. It's really a community event about all the things that Sandag is working on. We're doing kind of an activity around the request for innovative concepts. So remember, there were 18 proposals that were submitted, and then that went through a review process. There were 3 that made it to the final. We actually are planning something kind of fun, like a Shark Tank kind of event, to really ask a lot of questions about those. So one of those projects was the trolley across the border.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that the public knows and us on the dais recognize that October 9th isn't going to necessarily be final, plans to send our way, but more of an interactive activity. Fantastic. Secondly, with the jurisdictional level open data portal, are we looking to provide presentations or how to share that information with our regional leaders?
Oh, absolutely. So we've been working since the beginning of the year to create this portal. Right now, this is kind of a soft launch or a beta launch right now. And as soon as we have all of the rest of the data up there, including all the demographic data, we would be doing sessions for all of the member agencies to learn how to use the portal.
Great. And lastly, the road user charge conversation is going to be very essential, I think, at this next board meeting. And I want to thank my colleagues here for, helping to push that envelope. I think we do need to have the conversation. And I think the one point that Councilmember Rodriguez brought up about having short bursts of information, I think it also informs members of the public where we as an agency are going. So if we can have that and continue the dialogue as opposed to everything all at one time, at a future date that may or may not be certain, gives people peace of mind. So I want to say thank you for acknowledging the letter that the team here put out. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember Franklin, and welcome to the board today.
Thank you very much. I think we all know the weather wasn't great this morning. As I was coming through the streets of downtown, I saw a woman who was trying to find a piece of shelter underneath the bus stop. And I could see that as she was looking at the people in their cars, she had a look on her face that told me that she wished that she was in a warm environment and dry. I rode 2 buses and a train every day of my life for years, and it was my aspiration, and so I know that it's the aspiration of those of us who work for a living, earn a wage, are aspiring to enter the middle class, to have access to the independent transportation that an automobile provides. This body passed a 3.3 cent tax, is what's listed in Appendix V, the funding document for the RTIP. The leadership here has given direction to the staff, and months have gone by, deadlines have passed, and the public has begun to wonder why the staff has not done what's been asked by a majority of the board and proposed real alternatives at this time. And there is a concern. And the question being asked of me by my constituents is, is staff covering, or is continuing with the road user charge? Is that the real intention of the majority of this board? And it seems to be becoming clear that maybe that's what's really going on here. Of course, we'll have the opportunity in front of us right now to set that straight. And when I say that, I mean in the coming meetings, to actually make a material change. We don't reject the concept that electric vehicles need to pay their fair share of their impact on the roads. That's not what this is about. This is about enacting a per mile charge on working commuters without providing positive direction. I've scoured every news article that I can find about this subject, and I see no statements that give any surety to working drivers that they're not going to pay a gas tax on top of a road user charge. So if that's your intention, please state it clearly. I frankly be willing to engage in a road user charge conversation if it was confined to electric vehicles, but that doesn't seem to be the conversation. This is a regressive tax. It hurts people who work for a living the worst. And I am deeply concerned after having surveyed, I asked 30,000 residents of the city of Vista to complete a survey. I had 700 of them complete a survey, and 96% of them are opposed to paying a road user charge. So this is overwhelmingly unpopular precisely because it raises a huge amount of new taxes without any guarantee to taxpayers that there's actually going to be an offset somewhere else. And frankly, I don't believe that there is any intention of providing an offset for the gas tax. I believe that this is ultimately going to be an additional cost that drivers pay on top of the gas tax. It's going to cost a family with 2 vehicles and 2 drivers well more than $1,000 by my calculation, based on the average number of miles driven by California drivers and the average number of drivers per household. This is a crushing tax. And, frankly, I think I just have to say, shame on us if we don't take action to eliminate this tax. This is not the way to fund our road system, and it is not the way to achieve our very important climate goals and our goals to reduce GHG. This is the wrong way to go about it, and we are going to stand up and meaningfully resist this, and we are going to make sure that voters know that this is the wrong thing to do and that we do have a choice. So I ask all of you to move with haste to assure the public that this is not the direction that we're going to go to punish those who work for a living and need their automobiles to get to work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to continue to move through the list here, but we also have other items we need to get to, so I encourage brevity. Councilmember Gasterland.
Great, thank you. I will be brief, but I want to be very clear. I'm so glad that we have bench depth here in our Sandag leadership. Colleen did an amazing job as the acting CEO of the Otay Mesa East groundbreaking. That was just a joy to attend and see that exciting moment. You know, these are moments that are changing moments for our San Diego region. But the real reason I want to comment is Ray Major. This open data initiative that Ray's team has done, I see as being as groundbreaking and world-changing as the Department of Energy's initiative to sequence the human genome in the beginning of the 90s, the end of the 80s. In 1992, I finished my PhD in computer science and looked around and said, what's the data that is the most important data to work on right now? And I saw it was genomic data, DNA of our bodies. Your data that you're producing here is really the DNA of transportation and movement in our region. And it is unprecedented. So I look forward to you as a data wrangler, a fellow data wrangler, to really looking at this data and asking, what are the questions that we can ask in this region so that San Diego is setting an example, not only nationwide, but worldwide. You know, we'll be able to work together with Seoul, with Tokyo, with Berlin, with London, and with Washington, D.C., and really understand how to take movement to the next level. And to tie this to the road usage charge, John Franklin, welcome to the board. I truly believe that lurking in this data, deep in this data, if we ask the right questions, we're going to be able to sort out those vehicle miles traveled for work versus vehicle miles traveled for school, for pleasure, and we'll be able to turn around and prompt people with ways to say, hey, you're going shopping, you're out of laundry detergent, so don't forget to pick it up. You know, there's a lot that our world is going to be able to do going forward because of these data sets. What your team has done is unprecedented and really deserves a lot of glory. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hsu.
Thank you, Chair Blakespear. I'll try to make my comments brief, and I know we'll have a greater discussion on road use fee on the next time we meet. But I wanted to bring up a few items that was brought up just to put some balance to issues. I'm glad that Councilmember Rodriguez believes in climate change. But, you know, on a per capita basis, the United States produces much more pollution in greenhouse gas emissions than China. China just has to be a larger of a country. And that's why they may produce more. And historically, since greenhouse gas emissions last in our atmosphere a long time, our industrial complex in the western part of the world, namely in the United States, have produced much more greenhouse gas emissions than much per capita than the rest of the world. So we have a long ways to go to make up for the pollution, the greenhouse gas pollution that we have produced out of our industrial complex. And another last point is, we can't ask anybody else to reduce greenhouse gas emissions if we can't do it here. We have the best technology, we have the best means. And if we fail, if we're failing in doing that, it's unfair to ask anybody else to do it. Other industrial countries are doing it, whether it's in Denmark, Holland, and Germany. We should be able to keep up with them, if not show that we can do even better. And there's a few other statements that were made about road use fees and gas tax and everything else. And I wanted to try to let people do some more of their homework. The gas tax has never really paid for the roads themselves. we had to supplement it. And that's why in past times when I was sitting on the other side of the room and spending my 3 minutes, I would say the drivers are on welfare and they continue to be on welfare. We supplement the cost of roads and road building through other means, through other funds, which also help for healthcare, help for education and other things that we have in government. It is not fair that drivers get that much welfare when other people are doing less harm to our environment. Therefore, we need to correct that. And I hope the next time we meet, we come out with factual information from economists that will tell us that the gas tax is the regressive tax. A mileage fee is a more progressive tax. That's what economists have told us, that's what studies have told us, that's what the pilot studies have told us. That's the true information, and I hope we work with truth rather than misinformation. That's how we need to go forward, with good data and truthful policymaking. And lastly, I want to commend Sandag staff. When this board puts out conflicting policy statements, Sandag has to protect what is vital, our state and federal funding. If the RTP did not get through, did not get approved by CARB, it threatens our federal money, and none of us wanted that to happen. But unfortunately, this board put out conflicting information, conflicting policy information. We passed a policy on equity, and then we turned around and said, gee, maybe we don't want a vehicle per mile fee. That's conflicting information for staff. And they have to grapple with that. At the same time, meet the needs, the mandates from the state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. That's a horrendous task for the staff to do. We cannot hinder our Sandag staff with conflicting policy statements and policy moves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think that is all of the comments. Okay, I will call on you. It's the gray button above the blue button. There you go. Okay, great. Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chair Blakespear. So I wanted to address one thing in particular, and that is the letter that was sent by our director. So this board voted to eliminate the road user charge, and we sent a very clear direction to our staff, and Mr. Estrada is not here today, but I'm very concerned with the letter that was sent to CARB specifically. And, you know, one thing that I'd like to mention for some of our board is that we had a 19% reduction that we were to meet. We were actually 18.6, and I happen to know legally we could actually round that up, but there were never any options that were given to this board. All along, many times, I know many of us asked for making sure that we were going to meet that 6-month time frame to come back to the board with options. We were never actually even presented options. Then we actually took that vote at our July 8th meeting, and then a letter was sent the very next week, I think it was, by our director that was an insubordination of his duties here at Sandag. And I'd like to just hear from board leadership, what are we planning on doing with that? Because many of the board members, I think it was Matt Hall, had brought up a while back that we need to have a system where we are actually having a performance review of our director, and yet we haven't even agreed on that. And then we have this out in public sending a letter on behalf of the board that is against our direction, saying that the benchmark of all of our future plans are going to have a road user charge in it, when we've been given very direct, or we have given very direct information that we are definitely not planning on doing that. And the fact that we are so close, and I really do feel that based on everything that I have read, that we can round up and meet our 19% reduction without the road user charge in it. So I'd like to know what our plan is to actually figure out how we're going to have some sort of sanction or something like that for our director when he is not going along with the board direction.
So we'll be discussing this item at our very next board meeting. And we do have the executive director's performance evaluation, which is happening in October. I think that's the right month, which is a year. And we'll be able to discuss all issues, and all board members will be able to at that time.
Well, I feel like this needs immediate attention, because I don't even know if we have a fiduciary responsibility that would actually be affected by having a letter that is against our votes and with the direction that we give here at the board level. So I don't know. I think maybe Mr. Kirk could maybe weigh in on that. I'm not sure. Maybe we do it offline. I certainly don't want to waste our time, but I do believe that we should have some sort of direction on that.
Ultimately, whether his letter that he sent to CARB cuts against the clear direction of this board, and I believe that you're referring to the motion that was made on December 10th regarding developing an update to the regional plan, to including removal of the road usage charge, but also consistent with all applicable state and federal laws, including CEQA and greenhouse gas emissions. Whether it cuts specifically against that, we can certainly take a look at. I would say that that is a board issue primarily. If we feel like that raises a legal risk to the agency, happy to look at that. At this point, I don't believe that it does, but we're always happy to give a second set of eyes on that.
Okay, so it would be the two votes, the December 10th vote and then also the July 8th vote, because they were mostly the same, but we just want to make sure that we don't have any liability, in my opinion, because I think if we don't ask, we're putting ourselves in jeopardy, just to make sure that's clear.
Can absolutely look at both of them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. I just, without belaboring this, one, I think we need to be very careful about how we speak about personnel matters in open session. I think we're dancing on some pretty thin ice right now on that front. And so I would just encourage us to keep that in mind for the good of this, for the good of Sandag as a whole. Second, I hope that this conversation can be the beginning of this body and all the individual members of this body being more cognizant of the way that each of us as individuals have a responsibility to support the will of the body. We are as board members, we are supposed to be leaders, and we're supposed to demonstrate the behavior and model the behavior that we expect to see from those who work for us. So for us to have issues with actions that are not in line with board decisions, while multiple members of this board often take very public and antagonistic positions to the will of this body, I think is a bit inconsistent. And so I hope we can have a little more consistency, and that this conversation can be the start of us modeling the behavior that we wish to see. So that's all I wanted to add, with a very strong encouragement that we not actually create substantial risk for Sandag by discussing personnel matters in open session.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we're going to move on to the next items on our agenda. The next item is report, and this is number 8, which is our independent performance auditor's performance review and audit committee recommended compensation adjustment. And the audit committee chair, David Zito, is going to present.
Hello, everybody. Good to see everybody again in person. It's been a while. It's nice to see the faces. I'm here to present the annual review for the independent performance auditor, Mary. And this is a bit delayed. The review period is meant to be through her 3rd year in her role as IPA, which ended April 3rd of 2022. Sometimes these things get delayed, and unfortunately did in this particular instance. to quickly review some of the accomplishments that I think were notable in this particular performance period, the IPA's office did perform the SR 125 review, did do a vendor operational and systems control review, did do the P-card review. We did go through and are tracking the salaries and comp audit results and policy verification, and that actually is doing its final wrap up in the audit committee meeting today. And then we've also she's also started the contracts and procurement review. And additionally, the IPA is aggregating and reporting out status on all ongoing audit activities across the agency. They're doing risk discussion with the majority of the board and drafting the audit plan for the upcoming year. She's been running the fraud waste hotline. And as we all know, in that particular instance this year, discovered a toll collection issue with our toll roads, which was very substantial and important to be addressed. And last, putting in place some of the process for continuous auditing of certain functions in the organization. Notably, all of this is being done with staff that is less than half of what is recommended for an agency of this size and budget. Other things that I think are useful to cover with respect to the performance review, if you go into the staff report, one of the things that was not really correctly noted in there, just simply because the report was out of date, was the communication relationship development. When that was presented to the audit committee, that hadn't been done, but that's now completed. There was a 360 review done, which is in the staff report. You can see the results, which are pretty much everything has a very high level of strongly agree with respect to positive qualities of the auditor and her role in that office. And also all of the comments that were done in this 360 survey have been provided so people can review and see and understand and the results of this particular review. There was, in this particular period, also an external third-party review of the audit office and the output, and impressively, no recommendations were needed or requested as part of that review, which is a high level of accomplishment. All of these actions that are being taken, I believe, truly improve and, notwithstanding some of the BS politicization goes on, strengthen our organization and provide for stronger processes and controls. And in particular, if you look at the major plans that we have before us and the major responsibility that we have before us and the undoubted future of us going to the voters and asking for support to be able to fund a lot of these activities, having a strong audit office and achieving these types of solid results are very important. That is the review portion of it. The audit committee was also asked to make a recommendation on a salary increase. It's a little complicated because Mary's salary increase was due on April 3rd of this year. We also would note that Sandag staff was granted a 2.5% COLA increase across the board to all staff as of roughly the change of the fiscal year. So just to simplify that, we just wrapped it all together and said that at least as of that 2.5% COLA increase, we were recommending a salary of $243,000. The non-COLA portion of that would be wrapped back to April 3rd of this particular year in retroactive compensation. This is a notable increase. In justification of the sizable increase, we were referring back to having 3 years of good performance reviews and a third year of experience on here and doing good work in the agency. It is a very challenging position. Introducing a new role and new function at an agency that has long established character and processes is very complicated and can be challenging, in acknowledgement of that. And also it does keep her compensation more in line with other senior management relative to where she was being paid at when she was hired into the organization. So with that, I'm available for any questions, and I hope you can support the audit committee recommendation, which was provided to you with an unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair Zito, and thank you to the auditor for your hard work. We really appreciate the committee, all members of the committee working so diligently on this. So let's go to the public comment first, and then we'll go to board member comment and question.
There are no public comments on this item.
Okay. Mayor Jones.
Thank you so much. I think it's very important that we do fund our independent auditor. I do have a quick question. Is this the first Is this the first salary increase that we have given?
No, there was not in the staff report. It actually was a relatively complicated process simply because the first required annual review wasn't done, which was before I was on the committee. But then last year she did get a review, which took a year because the process was being established. And she was granted a salary increase last year there are actually two separate increases that were nominal increases. One went back 2 years and one went back 1 year to make up for the lack of having a review the first year that after her work here was completed. But she has received a salary increase, but both of the previous ones were done at the same time and they were just more like COLA increases.
All right, thank you. I just didn't, I needed you to refresh my memory on that.
Yep.
And then, so moving forward, is she in line then with other agencies of this size or not? That I don't think I read.
Oh, so with respect to comparison to other agencies, her salary is definitely easily within line, and relative to other agencies in the local region is probably even on the high end at this point. But that's again a reflection of the complexity of the role that she has, as well as keeping on par with the compensation of other senior management at this particular agency.
Yeah, and I do think her workload is probably a little bit more, and hopefully we'll be able to get her. I think we're a couple of positions down the last time that we spoke, so hopefully we'll be able to get that funded. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mayor Huebner.
Yes, thank you. I just want to comment on what an excellent report that was, and I know it was hard work on the audit committee and the subcommittee creating the process itself. It was quite impressive, the amount of detail you went into to create sort of a protocol for years going forward. And having worked with you, Councilmember Zito, for many years, making a recommendation like this, I know is a little bit out of what I would normally see coming out from Councilmember Zito. So I know that it's warranted. And so I would make a motion to approve the recommendation of the audit subcommittee, the whole audit committee.
I'll second that motion. Gasterland, Delmar.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second, so let's go ahead and vote.
Thank you. That item does pass unanimously with those members present.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a closing comment, thanks for the support. Thanks for the recognition, and we appreciate the effort on the board, and did want to publicly acknowledge one more time the tremendous work being done by the audit office and how important it is to the agency and how diligently they work towards the improvement of the agency. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Zito. Next, we're on to our consent calendar, which is items 2 through 4. 2 through 4.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have public comment on consent?
There are no public comments on the consent
Madam
calendar.
Chair, the consent calendar also includes item 5 and 6 if you're open to considering those.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it's 2 through 6.
As maker of the motion. Okay.
Okay. It shows that every member wants to speak. I think that might be from the vote. Is there a way to clear that? Well, if you're a board member who wanted to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, well then let's go ahead and vote.
That item passes unanimously with those members present.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So the next up is item number 9, and this is a public hearing for the proposed final 2023 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. And this is the time and place that is set for a public hearing for this proposed final 2023 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. Since this is a public hearing, we're going to do things a little bit differently. So first, staff will give us presentations, then we'll allow members to make clarifying questions only, and then we'll move to public comment, followed by member comment. So with that, I will hand it over to Richard Radcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. And can the presentation be brought up, please? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Chair, and good morning, Sandag board members. My name is Richard Radcliffe, and I am a financial analyst with Sandag. We wanted to take this opportunity to provide a reminder to members of the board and the public on what the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or RTIP, is, how it's related to the Sandag Regional Plan and the Sandag Program budget, and some of the requirements for the RTIP. Therefore, prior to holding today's public hearing for the 2023 RTIP, I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the program. And in the interest of time, I'll keep this brief. The RTIP is a list of transportation projects from the Sandag Regional Plan or the local Transnet program of projects. These projects have committed funding, and in the case of the 2023 RTIP, the funding is committed in fiscal years 2023 through 2027. These projects also support federal air quality and performance management targets. Sorry, a few of these slides should have come out. Federal planning and air quality regulations require that an MPO prepare a transportation improvement program. This program demonstrates that funds are committed to projects, and it's a necessary step in authorizing those funds. State law requires that the program gets updated every 2 years. And since many state fund types contain a federal component, state funds are programmed in the RTIP. The Transnet ordinance also requires that all Transnet dollars be programmed in the RTIP. Again, this is a necessary step to access those funds. Therefore, Sandag, Caltrans, and all local agencies, including the tribes, program projects in the RTIP. Sorry, we had some last minute changes in the interest of time. This chart, which has also been included as attachment 4 with today's agenda, shows the funding in the 2023 RTIP separated out by project mode. This includes the 5-year RTIP period covering fiscal years 2023 through 2027. Going clockwise from the top, multimodal represents 17%, highway represents 9%, and transit represents 18%. Most of the funding in the 2023 RTIP is going to operations and maintenance, which represents 43%. Active transportation represents 3%, local improvements represent 8%, and transportation demand management represents 2%. This slide here shows the remaining important dates and next steps in the 2023 RTIP development process. Looking at today, September 9th, we have the RTIP presentation and the public hearing for the 2023 RTIP. Next, the Sandag board will be asked to adopt the final 2023 RTIP on September 23rd, with the 2023 RTIP due to the state by October 1st. The state will then hold its public review period through October 31st, with federal approval of the 2023 RTIP expected on December 16th. And once the 2023 RTIP is federally approved, it will replace the 2021 RTIP, and the 2021 RTIP will no longer be valid for funding. Okay, so this item is for the public hearing on the proposed final 2023 RTIP. The set of projects in the 2023 RTIP was developed in coordination with other agencies that have transportation projects in the San Diego region. It includes 564 projects, including 396 projects carried over from the 2021 RTIP, 34 new projects, and 134 projects listed as completed, deleted, or delayed. On July 22nd, the Sandag Board approved the release of the draft 2023 RTIP for a 35-day public comment period, which concluded on August 27th. Attachment 5 includes any comments received from the public and Caltrans and the responses provided to those comments. Any comments received during today's public hearing will be added to this attachment and included in the final RTIP. Attachment 6 includes any changes made to projects between the draft and final versions of the RTIP. The final 2023 RTIP will be presented to the board on September 23rd, along with a presentation on the social equity analysis that was conducted on the 2023 RTIP. Sandag is required to submit the final 2023 RTIP to the state by October 1st, again with federal approval expected on December 16th. Therefore, the Sandag Board of Directors is asked to hold a public hearing and receive testimony for the proposed final 2023 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or RTIP, including its air quality conformity analysis and air quality conformity redetermination of the revenue-constrained 2021 regional plan. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, Richard. So do members have clarifying questions? I do not see any. So if members of the public wish to speak on this, you should state your name and address for the record. Do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one hand up from the public.
Okay.
Karina Contreras, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, hello. My name is Karina Contreras. I am speaking in my capacity as transportation policy advocate at Climate Action Campaign. And what I want to focus on in this item is the very small commitment to active transportation. ATP is critical. It's the lack of investment in our region is staggering. And if we are going to address some of the mandates that we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to really meet the climate crisis where it's at, we need to be better at allocating funds to promote active transportation program that is comprehensive, that really focuses on communities of concern. When people, especially with the $10 million grant for e-bikes, when people continue to take up cycling and increase their use of public transportation, the connection between our region from place to place is critical, and active transportation is a very critical component of that. So only having, not even getting into double digits of funding for ATP is just unacceptable. We are living through the climate crisis right now. We had extreme heat. I'm here in Vista and there's tons of wind gusting everywhere. The rain is a concern, and these events continue to get more out of control. Now, with active transportation, it is absolutely critical that we create a connected and modernized system. The infrastructure needs to be protected bike lanes, needs to be more green space and shaded space with California native plants that are site suitable. And it needs to be comprehensive and holistic. We need to have clean stops, stations, security, and a place for people to utilize drinking fountains and public restrooms. So I really, really encourage this body to put more funding and more focus on ATP moving forward. Like I said, communities of concern, you know, we already don't have a lot of tree canopy. This is a great way to really honor those who are reducing greenhouse gas emissions daily by cycling, walking, and using public transportation, and provide them with the infrastructure that shows that we are honoring what they're doing on a daily basis, and we value what they are doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
Chair, we do have one additional comment from Mike Bullock. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you, honorable board and members. Just a few short comments here about a transportation improvement plan where you have items listed. And I hope that it's very clear what the impact is in terms of vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. Is a project going to increase vehicle miles traveled? We see those kind of projects completed here at Sandag, sadly, because given where we are and how much we've known, should have known 10 years ago, we should not be, for example, building HOV lanes, new HOV lanes. And we should not have public officials putting false statements into the newspaper about how those HOV lanes are going to reduce vehicle miles traveled and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's not true. You may have that theory that it's going to encourage carpooling somehow or other enough, but it isn't true. And so projects need to be clearly evaluated. Those HOV projects, when they were being considered, when they were part of RTIP, it should have been clear that research has indicated, no doubt about it, it's going to increase vehicle miles traveled. It's going to increase greenhouse gas emissions. And every project that's on a list that's proposed, that should be clearly stated. And of course, your primary concern now is human survival. Human survival requires climate stabilization. Climate stabilization requires that you do much better than that 19% reduction in vehicle miles traveled, or 18.6 if you want to do that. You know, it's not close. I mean, I've done a study of what has to be done, a set of enforceable measures to cause cars, light duty trucks to achieve the actual 2030 climate stabilization requirement instead of the SB 375, which is not climate stabilizing. It's not even close. You have to do much more than that. So your RTIP needs to be clear about those all important parameters, greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled. How much will they decrease those? If they don't decrease them by a lot, we shouldn't be spending the money, because that's what we absolutely have to do, because life is that valuable. That has to be your highest priority here at Sandag. Thank you.
Yeah, that concludes the public commenters.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Franklin.
Yeah, can I just confirm that this plan doesn't rely on any new taxation funding? This is all dependent on existing tax sources.
The RTIP is all based on existing funding sources between now and then five years look ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will now close the public hearing. So we have no more member comments or public comments, and this is only a public hearing, so we will not be taking a motion or action on this. It'll come back to us. So next we're on to item 10, which is an update on Sandag's Equity Action Plan. So with that, I will hand it to Elaine Richardson. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. Thank you so much for your time today as I introduce and update our Equity Action Plan. And again, I'm Elaine Richardson. I'm the Director of Diversity and Equity at Sandag. Next slide, please. Let me just update. Last year, you adopted a statement that affirms Sandag's commitment to equity. Within it are these 5 clear expectations for what our equity action plan should accomplish. Along with the people we serve, these commitments have been central to the development of our equity action plan. Every employee's work has the potential to advance equity, and many Sandag teammates have contributed to getting us to this point. The group of directors who serve as executive sponsors for the Equity Action Plan identified a project team comprising employees who bring a broad range of expertise and life experiences. We also engaged consultants to bring an independent and unbiased perspective toward developing our Equity Action Plan. Next slide, please. Since we last spoke to you in January, we made progress toward developing the plan. In May, a survey of internal and external stakeholders provided insights into what should be prioritized in our Equity Action Plan. That input, along with previously gathered information, was reviewed by a cohort of 16 stakeholders in a series of 5 workshops held this summer. The cohort included agency leadership, employees, and stakeholders representing partner agencies and community-based organizations. The workshops prioritized outcomes, goals, strategies, and metrics for the plan. In the weeks ahead, the Equity Action Plan will be written using all of this input, expertise, and experiences gathered along the way, including from you, the Social Equity Working Group, the DEI Council, and the communities we serve. The Equity Action Plan will be presented to the board later this year. Next slide, please. Running parallel with the Equity Action Plan project team, the data team is working to complete the Social Equity Baseline Report by fall of 2022. It will include a wide range of data about race, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, income, and more. Bless you. The data will help us understand the benefits and burdens of Sandag programs and how to increase access and affordability to people who have been marginalized or historically underserved. Especially pertinent to today's discussion, the baseline report will provide metrics for us to measure the effectiveness of implementing the Equity Action Plan. Next slide, please. I'd like to highlight a few programs where we've advanced equity since we last reported to you. As you heard earlier in the meeting, Sandag has, for the very first time, we're analyzing the projects in the Regional Transportation Improvement Program to evaluate their distribution in disadvantaged communities. There was a 78% increase in youth riders, which is, I believe, is so phenomenal. In the first month of the Youth Opportunity Pass, and ridership numbers continue to be elevated. Sandag and the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association hosted a joint digital equity workshop to explore how to improve internet connectivity on tribal lands, and there are now more than 2,600 new subscribers to the Affordable Connectivity Program. The Specialized Transportation Grant Program was analyzed to understand if funding is distributed equitably, and the Access for All Grant Program, which will provide funding to improve mobility for seniors and persons with disabilities, is open now for applications. Through the open data portal, the public will be able to access more data and turn that data into actions that can benefit historically underserved communities. And finally, 5 rounds of graduates, which equates to 84 individuals, have come through the pre-apprenticeship program that Sandag has partnered in. The cohort is made up of 42% of Hispanic or Latino, 13% Black, 18% women, and 26% with previous criminal justice involvement. and I'm happy to report that 74% of these students are employed. While the Equity Action Plan is being developed, we'll continue to promote efforts which demonstrate a commitment to equity. Next slide, please. This summer, Sandag updated our language assistance plan, which identifies what languages are spoken in the region by people who don't speak English very well. That is, persons with limited English proficiency, or what we refer to as LEP. A federal requirement, the plan also establishes how we will provide access to Sandag programs and projects, and how we will ensure that persons with LEP can participate meaningfully in planning and decision-making processes. In the San Diego region, there are 17 languages that meet the threshold for which we provide translation or interpretation. The languages are spoken in a range of about 250,000 Spanish speakers with LEP to about 1,000 Ukrainian-speaking LEP individuals. The free language assistance text in those 17 languages is being added to a variety of public outreach and informational materials, including the agenda for today's meeting. I hope you all were able to see it. Also, since we last spoke, several activities, next slide, please. Also, since we last spoke, several activities have progressed to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within Sandag. The DEI Council shared information and held events with employees to honor and celebrate Black History Month, Cesar Chavez Day, Asian American Pacific Islander Month, Juneteenth, and Pride. In July, cultural intelligence and unconscious bias training was offered to all employees, and future trainings are planned to be offered quarterly. Employee resource groups were established to provide space for employees to discuss experiences and support each other, and we recently provided guidelines for more ERGs to be established. Next slide, please. Today is one step further on our journey to DEI. Advancing equity and inclusion in everything we do is a core value at Sandag. And we have many activities underway that demonstrate Sandag's commitment to equity, including implementing our new language assistance plan. As our Equity Action Plan comes together this fall, we will continue to look for opportunities to advance DEI within Sandag and within the region in pursuit of a brighter future for everyone in the San Diego area. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Do we have any public comment on this?
We do have two hands raised from the public, Karina Contreras, followed by Mike Bullock. Karina, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name's Karina Contreras, and on this item, I'm actually going to speak in my capacity as a council member for the City of Vista, District 1, as one of the few council members, probably in the region, that utilizes public transit for the majority of my trips. I want to talk about the Youth Opportunity Pass. It's been incredible. You know, Vista is a city where a median age is around 33. And during school hours, it's incredible. I mean, the 303 bus, it's barely standing room only. So one, it's a beautiful sight to see, but two, there's a real issue. When there's so much capacity that's being grown for ridership, but without the actual infrastructure for it, meaning more frequency for the bus route or more buses or articulated buses, it creates a huge problem. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that we don't have enough bus operators. And we've been having a real issue with bus operators, not only at North County Transit District and MTS, but our schools are also having issues. So people are needing to rely on public transit, and our youth are utilizing it to connect everywhere. And I think it's great. So when we're talking about equity, We have to understand too that if we're going to increase the ridership, we need to ensure that the reliability for these routes is there. Because right now, it's way over capacity for the type of infrastructure that we have. So equity should extend also to our workforce. Our bus operators should be able to have a package that includes affordable housing. We have a lot of public lands under NCTD, MTS, and other public agencies that would be perfect for building affordable housing as part of an incentive package to ensure that our reliability on our public transportation, whether it's buses, trains, trolleys, all of that, the reliability needs to be there. And we need to be able to increase our frequency. So I just want to put a plug in there that equity, it's great that we're taking these steps towards it, but we also have to look at our own employees and how are we at these different agencies committing equity when it comes to affordability and a living wage so that people can afford to live near where they work and create the capacity needed for these public systems to work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have one additional public comment. Sam Beltram, you can go ahead when you're ready and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of the board. Thank you for everything that's been shared so far this morning. And thank you for that equity report. I just would like to mention another group that's also invisible often and left out. I would hope the equity report will include more information on actions done to forward equity for people with disabilities, because we're treated as second-class citizens where other needs and other groups' needs and just other needs in general are prioritized over ours. And when this happens, we're made invisible and completely omitted out of data collection, oftentimes even, or get canceled out of the data. So lack of visibility, it's important. It contributes to other issues, such as making our concerns become repeatedly silenced or also left out. So I do hope you'll consider that in future equity reports, where we're not just a soundbite or completely missing, but there's actual detailed information about the actions that are being done to forward equity for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Alex Wong. Alex, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, excuse me. I am, excuse me. So is this the general public member comments?
No, we are taking comments on the equity item at the moment.
Oh, okay. Yes, in which case? So I would like to speak, yes.
Okay, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready. So Sandag and MTS must save up money to increase frequencies on the busiest transit lines once the pandemic-induced driver shortage ends. Currently, most of the trolley and bus system features inconvenient 15-minute rush hour frequencies. This is unacceptable. For the majority of MTS passengers who are low income, transit is a lifeline. But frankly, most MTS lines have low frequencies and long wait times, and that's an injustice to anyone who cannot afford to drive. It forces transit riders, especially those who need to transfer between lines, to endure longer commute times than more affluent motorists. It means that low-income passengers will be able to reach far fewer employment and educational opportunities than wealthier people. It's saying to poorer folk that they have to spend more time commuting on transit because they don't have the money for a car. It's saying to transit riders that their time doesn't matter as much. And transit will continue to be stigmatized as second-class transportation. Making transit free will not correct this injustice or remove the stigma of taking transit. Only increasing frequency and speed will. If Sandag is serious about equal opportunity for low-income residents, Sandag must make transit as time competitive with driving as possible. To this end, Sandag should improve both transit speed and frequency. But the first thing Sandag can and must do is to increase frequencies, because whilst increasing speed is a long-term investment taking years and billions of dollars, you can increase frequency much more quickly. All you need is more vehicles and drivers. In 2020, MTS doubled frequencies almost instantly on the South Bay Blue Line corridor. Yes, Sandag's RTP pledges to increase all trolley frequencies to 7.5 minutes by 2045, but sadly this might be an empty promise. When Sandag proposes to make transit free for all by 2031, that is not quite equitable, because it makes me worry that Sandag is paying lip service to increasing frequencies but will not follow through. By proposing to spend $35 million annually on free transit passes for everyone under 24 when MTS annual operating budget is only $100 million, Sandag and MTS will run out of money to increase or even maintain existing frequencies. Ridership will then stagnate, if not decline, leading to a vicious cycle of reduced service and decline. If money were no object, transit could be both free and frequent, but the unfortunate reality is that transit funding is scarce, meaning free transit and increasing service are competing priorities. Sandag cannot do both. It must choose one or the other. The fact is that Transnet is running out very quickly, and MTS will run out of operating revenue by 2028. And as Let's Go San Diego's failed attempt to gather enough signatures for a citizens' initiative shows, such taxes are hard to come by. Free transit may make headlines, but it should never come at the expense of improving service frequencies. Sandag and MTS must never compromise on service for anything. Thank you.
And that concludes the public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hsu.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Elaine, for this report. And I want to first thank you for the report for many of the details that's within it with regards to our language services and services to other groups. And I want to kind of dive back on the initial policy statement that the Sandag board approved over a year and a half ago with regards to equity. It was, I think, a major shift and an emphasis that this body wanted to make in terms of approaching equity. And there are certain parts of that statement that I want to highlight, particularly when it comes to safety, health, access, dealing with these disparities within our system. And specifically, there's some additional language with regards to how we prioritize, fund, and build projects. And to me, that's the key to the equity statement. It's fine for us to increase access and assure access to people with different language needs, and that's great, and improve communications systems to the highway of the internet. But let's face it, there's some true disparities within our region with regards to transportation, how we fund transportation, and so forth. Let me point a few of those things out. For many years, I've been advocating that we track the cost of transportation as a percentage of family income. That should be the matrix, and that's one of the matrices for equity. So like the chart that you gave with regards to language needs, can we not also geographically show where our transportation costs are being met and how they're met by a percentage of family income throughout our region? When we come to health and safety issues, there's already a map by environmental screening as to where we have huge pollution issues, largely due to transportation pollution. And as Council President Rivera knows, I have this other broader goal, and I might as well spell it out in this body again. Environmental screening shows certain parts of our region that are colored red because of the pollution that those communities have. We should have a goal as part of equity that we provide our RTP, at least the next RTP, in which we can show those areas to at least go from red to yellow, if not green. That should be our goal if we're committed to equity, and we can do that. We should do that within our environmental planning and how we plan for transportation. Whatever it takes, we need to do that because it's not fair to for those communities to continue to be in the red in environmental screening. We've had that tool for close to 10 years, and we haven't put forward a plan to change the color of those communities and the pollutions that they receive. When it comes to safety, You know, I just read an article in Bloomberg, came out September 6th. In the United States, our accident rate per capita is going up. In the rest of the world, it's going down. In fact, our accident rate, that is people getting hurt from transportation, from mainly cars, is 5 times higher than it is in Japan. 5 times higher. Why is it that our people are getting hurt and killed due to our transportation system and the system's going up? And more importantly, when we come to equity, I've seen data that shows that in our poorer communities in San Diego, the accident rate is much, much higher than our wealthier communities, that pedestrians are getting killed and hurt. That's another equity issue and measuring point if we really are committed to equity and safety issues. We should be tracking that. Why is someone in Sean Rivera's district getting hurt by traffic accidents many, many times more than another district in San Diego? That's not right. We should be tracking that. That's part of equity. We have that responsibility with transportation planning and Sandag. To me, those are the priorities that's set forward with this equity statement. That's what we should be tracking and hopefully moving towards a plan, another challenge for our planners, to put in a plan to fix that, to change that. And lastly, on funding. We've heard of different funding mechanisms. Let's really provide what that really means if we want to fund transportation equitably. There's no reason why poor people should be paying more for transportation than rich people. But unfortunately, I think that's what's happening now, that people that are wealthy, as a percentage of their family income, are paying much, much less than someone who is barely making it within our community. So I hope that's what we can move forward on with our transportation planning and with regards to equity and our equity planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have our final board member speaker is North County Transit District Chair Edson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Elaine, for a detailed report that was so informative and encouraging. Youth Opportunity Pass program, I just wanted to take a moment, and I promise I'll be brief. It's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I advocated for in TC for a number of years and am overjoyed by the adoption of the pilot program and the expansion of including graduated foster youth. So success is clear. As an example, between April 2022 and July 2022, ridership across all modes at NCTD increased on Saturdays by 171%. I think that that's something to point at, and hopefully funding can be identified to continue and perhaps even expand this program. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, well, this item is an information item, so thank you very much again, Elaine. And next, we're on to our final item, which is our Sandag Board of Director Workshop Next Steps. So Steve Pontel is going to take this item. He's our facilitator, and I'm going to hand it over to Steve. And I think we'll take any public comment after his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everybody. Congratulations on your perseverance to sticking it through to this point. Just a real quick summary. Those of you that had the opportunity to participate in the retreat that we had, I wanted to, because we're shifting gears right now, and one of the challenges is when you sit as a member of this board of directors, you wear many hats. You wear the hat representing your organization, you wear the hat representing the region as a whole, but you also wear the hat with regard to being the board of directors of this organization and your responsibility and commitment to its effective operation. And so as you may recall at the retreat, we talked a lot about what kind of organizational culture you felt would be most appropriate in order for this organization to be a high functioning organization. And what you have before you today, and Madam Chair, I'm willing to do as much or as little if you think we should come back at some future time for actually taking this deeper. But let me just introduce this and then get any additional input, and then we can decide which direction to go. So it's this actually agenda item number 7, I think, in your packet. I think everybody has a copy of these. These are actually your words from the retreat. And so the intent being adopting what you thought at that time were critical elements of this organization's culture perspective. So number 1, first of all, any questions about that? That makes sense? Yes, Steve, it's late. We've heard a lot. Number 1, everybody agreed at the time that Sandag is a critical part of the San Diego region's ability to achieve its desired future. So universal commitment to the critical role Sandag plays in the future of San Diego County. Number 2, a culture based on a foundation of mutual respect creates the best environment for success. This includes disagreeing agreeably. Number 3, these are your words, as some of you may recall. Number 3, a complete, timely conversation with transparency is critical to building trust. Number 4, creating a learning environment with constructive feedback is best for improving the organization. An environment that assumes the best intentions and not a culture of fear of failure. And then the last one, and just kudos to this organization and your success in Sacramento and Washington and getting additional resources into it, but everybody agreed that it is best for the region to have a united voice in Sacramento and DC and everywhere. And Sandag's ability to provide that united voice when seeking resources. So do some of you remember this conversation and remember some of these points? And so the next step in the process was, all right, if the board of directors believes these, and this is just a starting point, then at some point, quote unquote, adopting them in some fashion would not only give the board of directors some touch points to be able to reflect back on, but also give staff some perspective about the thoughts of the board and the direction the board wants to go. So let me pause there. Questions, comments? Reaction, thoughts?
I think that seems like a good idea, but I encourage you to do your whole presentation, and then we can see if anyone has comments at the end.
Okay, so then the last point I wanted to make is that staff has been taking the comments and the discussion that occurred at the Board of Directors retreat seriously, and has internally began to make moves in order to accomplish it. And so the staff internally has had some strategic initiatives that focus on how this organization can operate more effectively and how this organization can respond quickly in a much more flexible environment, and has been diligently working on creating more of a matrix organization as in order to figure out ways to bridge the silos that exist within all organizations. And so to the staff's credit, and at some point in the future, I'd recommend the staff actually give a report on those accomplishments that have been made. So for example, significant accomplishments in some of the IT infrastructure and communication capabilities of the organization, and then those initiatives that are still underway within the organization. So the intent is the board of directors think about how it can have a positive influence on the culture of the organization, how the board of the directors interacts with itself and with staff, and then make sure that staff is making the moves to accomplish the culture of the organization that the board of directors believes is most effective. So those are the steps in the process that are underway, and staff is following through and working on ways to improve the operations of the organization in alignment with these thoughts. So let me stop there.
Okay, well, thank you. So the thing, you went over some points at the beginning. Are you suggesting as next steps that you would come back to us in a more codified way and we would adopt those? I think it would be good to have a type of code of conduct or a way to behave that we all agreed on.
Yes, and so that's why what we wanted to do today is come back with these thoughts, any additional feedback, comments, reaction, and then we can put it in a form of a motion of, whatever the appropriate document would be, and bring them back.
Okay, let's see if we have any public comment on this.
We don't have any public comments on this item.
Okay, any board members wishing to comment? Council President Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Chair. I guess first, just a quick follow-up. I want to make sure that I'm providing the feedback that you're looking for. What exactly, in terms of feedback, do you want from us? Is it specific direction? Is it?
Yeah, feedback on these thoughts.
Okay. Those ideas that we presented before. Yeah, I mean, I for whatever it's worth, I don't think the need to address any of those issues has waned since we had those conversations in the spring. Certainly would like to see progress on those. So for whatever it's worth, I think everything there is relevant. It is interesting to hear them without being attached to a name or a voice, and the different ways that I think they're applicable regardless. How some of us interpret what that might look like in action, I think will differ, but I do think that they're important points. And again, don't think that any or all of it has been resolved since then.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza.
This is something I think that a lot of councils and school boards are adopting, and that's codes of conduct among their council members. Our council has just recently adopted some protocol that council members should be following. You think it's obvious, it should be obvious to people, but it's not. And it also addresses, it doesn't seem like we're having this problem so much at Sandag as school boards are and council meetings, but also the code of conduct that we expect from our audience. And it's just mutual respect for each other when you're addressing staff, other board members, things of that nature. And I've even over the years belonged to different organizations that, like, on the back of every agenda will have just sort of standard codes of conduct. I'm an alternate on the board, and I'm going to defer to my mayor, even though I did attend the workshop, and I'm really glad that I did. But that's just sort of my 2 cents. I think that I've been in some contentious meetings, or been on Zoom with some contentious Sandag meetings, and I think that reminding us of how we need to treat each other is important.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Salas.
Yes, thank you very much. And Jennifer, I totally agree with you. I know that when we have very contentious meetings or items at City Hall, and I know that there's a lot of opposition and support for a certain item or another, I make it a point to set the stage at the beginning of the meeting, telling them that there's no clapping allowed, no booing allowed, no respect of whoever is speaking, whatever their opinion is. And I think that that's so important to set it right at the beginning, before the meeting or before the particular item starts. And I think that that curtails a lot of that bad behavior. But you also brought up a really good point that there are things that we know logically that we should all know and respect and understand. And I think it's so important for this board to be reminded that any discussion about staff behavior, personnel matters, are totally inappropriate on this board. And when that happens, there should be an admonishment to that particular person that is crossing the line as soon as it starts. Not only to protect the organization, but to protect that particular board member or person that is making those comments, personnel comments, from their own liability for what they're saying. So I would just say that that's so important on this board in particular. as well as every city council board that we sit on, to remember that personnel matters, and vilification or opinions about a particular staff member are off the board in the public, that is a discussion for closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's also important just to focus on the reality that we all sit on our own individual city councils that make decisions about and speak with the voice of the majority. So we've all been on the losing side of votes, and those votes move forward, and that's what happens. That's what the agency does. That's the agency's position. And so, you know, the reality is we had more than a third of the board members attempt to undermine the way that this board spoke with its majority, and contacting a state agency and attempting to undermine the funding sources and the regional plan that we need in order to be able to move forward with the work of this agency and the work of all the cities and the county that are on this board. And so, you know, having a clear code of conduct that reinforces the value of saying this is our democratic process, that the majority decision is what we should all respect, and we should all recognize that there are times when you win a vote and times when you lose a vote, but still we respect the process of saying that outcome is what is the official position of this agency. And so the fact that, you know, even after we had this meeting with you, and you know, large numbers of people were there who were on this board, we still continue to struggle with this, obviously. So I think having something that we clearly all adopt as general principles that we can refer back to when we have these problems and these violations, and recognizing that this type of thing needs to be called out, and like Mayor Salas said, an admonishment. I mean, I think that would be really helpful for this board, especially as we're moving forward and continuing to try to do the work of this really important agency of Sandag. So you know, I encourage you to, with haste, bring it back to us in an adoptable format. And I thank you for continuing to shed some light on this in ways that we can improve as an agency and as a board.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
And I'll call on Mayor Gasterland.
Yeah, very short comment. I echo everything you just said. And thank you for bringing this forward. Please do. I'd like to add, as I guess I've been on this board now for a year and a half, and there's so much that this board has done in years past that I don't know about. And I rely on my fellow board members who've been on the board longer, and also on the Sandag staff, to help me understand, you know, for example, what have been the inequities of the past, and how are we trying to fix them now? And you know, it goes back and forth. Sometimes you work on one problem and you're not working on the other problem, and the folks who are affected by the other problem feel neglected. And I think if we can rise above this somehow through the new policy, that we can bring in a process that helps us to not only respect the past and how that's brought us to the present, but to be able to go back and read documents about it. You know, there are many times when I've wished for one document or another to understand something that was decided in 2012 or 2010. And you know, I turn to the Sandag staff for that. They always produce it. But I hope that we would be encouraged as board members to take the long view, not just 5 years and 10 years into the future, but remembering 5 years and 10 years into the past.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think that's it for this item. So thank you very much, Steve. We really appreciate your help. So now we are on to any non-agenda public or member comments. So we did not do that at the beginning to make sure we got to everything, which luckily we have. So let's go ahead with any public comments that are non-agenda.
Thank you, Chair. We do have one in-person public comment and several online. Catherine Rhodes, you can go up first if you'd like. And following Catherine will be Mary D.
Hello. Hi, this is Catherine Rhodes, and I just wanted to tell you some fabulous, great news. The first tiny home project in San Diego County is going to have a ribbon cutting and a dedication ceremony today, Friday, September 9th at 6 p.m. It's going to be at Meridian Baptist Church in El Cajon. And it's called the Meridian Amicus Emergency Sleeping Cabin Village for Women and Children. So this will be for women and babies. The first one opened in San Diego. And so it's located at 660 South 3rd Street in El Cajon. And I hope that different people actually come out there and look at it. You could look at it anytime you want to. So also, the great news too, of the Lucky Duck Foundation gave the city of San Diego money to open up a new congregate tent in the Midway area this morning, I guess. Fabulous, fabulous news. Great. One thing, I want to talk about is the homeless ticketing and how even our council president, Shawnee Rivera, and Mayor Todd Gloria can make a change in our municipal code to get rid of the law that says homeless people can't be on the street. It's illegal for them to be on the street, and then they get tickets. iNewsSource did a fabulous investigation of the ticketing of the homeless people, and they found out that when all the tickets are getting dismissed because the city attorney is not turning in the body cameras from the police department to confirm, as evidence. So what happens is the police don't want to do any of this, but the Get It Done app has actually a thing for homeless encampment. So everybody who has a problem with homeless goes around and encampment. Then instead of sending the hot team out, the homeless officer team, or I'm not sure what it's called, they send regular police out there to harass people. They're now moving to the riverbeds. Now it's raining. How many people, are going to die? So many people die. Almost, I think this last month, I don't even want to cry about it. So many people are dying. You guys could do so much and you're doing nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mary D., who will be followed by Alan Curry.
Hi, Mary D. here. First, just a couple things. One is about the code of conduct. If you are thinking about moving forward with that, I would strongly urge you to leave clapping out of it. For example, the Board of Supervisors has gone far too far, and even when you have Mayor Salas equating clapping as, quote, bad behavior, which he just stated, that is absolutely ridiculous. Clapping is a First Amendment right. In fact, it's been equated as a form of almost pure speech by the Supreme Court, the California Supreme Court. In fact, City Attorney Mara Elliott talked about in a recent article, quote, disruptive behavior does not include criticizing an agency or legislative body, including harsh questioning or booing, all of which were found lawful by the California Supreme Court. So it would seem at that point that cheers of support or clapping would equally fall under that case precedent umbrella. I do refer you to the case precedent of N. Ray K. For those not familiar with it. Now moving on to the area of accessibility and transparency, I wanted to touch on them and how Sandag is falling short on aspirational goals in your meetings. I strongly urge and now even insist that you develop an audible roll call at the start of your meetings. The public deserves to know who is and is not present. An audible roll call is extremely important under the umbrella of accessibility. The visually impaired should be able to hear who is present as a matter of equity. For the visually abled, an audible roll call ensures transparency and accountability. One has only to look at the glaring example from this morning's executive committee meeting, which was canceled at the last minute due to lack of a quorum. Those of us who took the time to call in were left to wonder who showed up, but more importantly, who did not. We should not have to wait for minutes to be released in coming days to find out who is living up to the responsibility of their office and who is not. The disabled advocate lady who spoke just a bit ago about ableism and how the disabled are frequently omitted when it comes to equity and accessibility brought home the point perfectly. And by incorporating an audible roll call, it's a simple, easy fix that will help move your agency forward in leveling the playing field when it comes to accessibility and equity, while also enhancing transparency and accountability for your agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan Curry, who will be followed by Sam Beltram.
Hi, good morning, honorable board and members. Been a while since I spoke. Last time I spoke, I pointed out the mileage tax. In the very following meeting, there was a rough draft to exclude the mileage tax. And here we have our director going against the majority board that wants to remove the mileage tax. Who does the board of director work for? Who does he answer to? We had a unanimous vote going to a different item to remove the toll booths down on 125. And yet 2 weeks later, new toll booths are put in. Who is watching the hen house here? And when will the board take action and fire this guy or put a serious reprimand, because he is not representing the will of the board and the will of the public when you guys are representing us? Do the right thing, because we are suffering here big time. And then for this guy to push forward this road tax on top of proposed MTS tax, on top of proposed library tax, and with a gas and inflation, gas is still $5 a gallon. And with inflation, which gas affects the price of delivery of everything, it affects the price of formula, diapers, and everything. And yet you have your own director. I mean, I own a store. If I was on a store and my store manager did not do the directives I set forth, he would be fired today. And yet this is how it allowed to happen. This guy has taken lobster dinners. I'm sorry, Mr. I don't know your name, but you're gone too far. You're not following the will of the people. And then the bus lanes, which I mentioned down 805 off of Palomar 805, you got the silly bus lane taking the emergency lane. There's signs up now. You actually have the bus stopping on cars coming on ramps, and yet this bus is going to squeeze that emergency lane. It's actually less width than the bus. So all the millions of dollars you spend on all these signs and taking over the lights, pissing off commuters, when the priority is climate over the safety of what's going on with the public, and you're actually causing more risk and damage. So please push forward and remove the toll. Let's look at why this director isn't following the will of the board, as who is following the will, well, hopefully the will of what the voters are asking for, and do the right thing, because it has gone too far. This guy's sliding the table. Because like I said, I do have the draft from back in June 8th when there was a draft proposed alternate spending plan. So quit hiding it, please. Stop. The people are suffering, all these taxes and slipping it in. And how can you tax a road use tax on roads that we already paid for, a double tax? Somebody ought to step forward and say, hey, that's illegal. You can't do that. I mean, you can't double tax on the same item. Thank you, board, and please do the right thing.
Our next speaker will be Sam Beltram, who will be followed by Mike Bullock. Mike Bullock will be our last speaker.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board, for this opportunity to share the voices of we the people. I'd like to speak to another aspect of safety issues, transportation and equity issues in transportation, specifically affecting people with disabilities in our daily lives with regard to the paratransit programs that provide transportation to people with disabilities. So since my speaking time is limited, I'll have to focus on the recent occurrences with specifically MTS. And this is regarding safety issues with MTS's taxi program. I can only speak for myself, and I keep praying that more people with disabilities will find courage to come speak to you, despite the penalizing actions taken against us for voicing concern. So let me just start by saying that I want to note that last August, I had requested to not be forced to ride in the taxi program of MTS's Access Paratransit. And that's because the taxi drivers' unsafe behaviors. So I was instructed that I had to, call a number. I called, I did the interview. I was told I was approved as taxi exempt. And this was all kept verbal. This was all kept verbal. I wasn't given anything in writing, no notice about the taxi exempt application or information about the process, no notice of decision that I was approved, or nothing describing any caveats. It was all kept verbal, and that contributes to the transparency issues later at this point in time. So we heard transportation is a lifeline, and it is. It is. So 2 days ago, I had to file multiple complaints, but we'll go back to 2 days ago. I had a medically necessary appointment, and I needed paratransit to get there. Now, if I didn't get there, I have to wait 5 more months to schedule with my specialist, and I'm just out of luck. And you can get charged for no showing to your appointments. So I called to check status, found out it was a taxi, explained yet again, I do not feel safe in the taxis with their driving. And the response of MTS is that there's driver shortage and the taxi is what you have. So I'm forced to ride in that taxi. So the system has multiple issues that I can't even go into because I'm running out of time, but where the data, we go missing in the data. So when I talked to the head of the access program yesterday, for example, I explained that the taxi doesn't have the signage. There's nothing marking the company, the cab number, that it's an MTS access vehicle. The driver's texting on the phone while he's driving with his eyes completely off the road. I shouldn't be forced, and none of us with disabilities should be forced to ride in these kind of programs. So I'm asking, cutting a lot out here, asking that you please consider putting on future agendas MTS's taxi program and evaluating the taxi exemption process, making it mandatory to provide written notices. Also, as part of equity, that the board consider quarterly performance audits of MTS customer service line, who admonished me for filing a complaint. And that's how we go missing from the data. I ask that you quarterly monitor it and do a sampling of 100% of complaint calls taken as in a specific period of time and assessing if they are admonished.
I'm sorry to have to cut you off there, Sam, but your time has expired. Our next speaker will be Mike Bullock. You can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Honorable Chair and board members, Mike Bullock from Oceanside. As I think you know, I support the 5 big moves. However, the 19% reduction in per capita driving by 2035 with respect to 2005 as required by SB 375 is too little, too late. And saying that 19% or 18.6% is good enough is disrespectful of life on this planet, because human survival requires climate stabilization. We must avoid climate destabilization. We achieve our percent reduction, and that will set an example for other MPOs and governments all around the world. I used to say that I favored a road use charge. I hope I never say that again. I must say I favor replacing the state gas tax with a state means-based progressive road use charge. I learned most of that from the state of California by reading its draft Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, sometimes referred to as the state CAPTI. It called for replacing the state gas tax with a means-based road use charge. This means that the state understands that driver income needs to be data, which is used by the road use charge system. The board, you have taught me that I must add the word progressive, because means-based does not seem to be doing the job I thought it would. Means-based means that the income and perhaps wealth of a driver is used in determining the charge. I have said that the gas tax is very regressive. Let's say 2 drivers drive the same car, drive the same distance, such that the gas tax charges each driver $1,000. Let's say one driver earns $10,000 per year and the other earns $100,000 per year. Although both drivers are charged the same, this tax is very regressive. Most of us would say it's inequitable. If the wealthy driver was charged 9 times as much, which is $9,000, that tax would still be regressive. If the wealthy driver was charged $10,000, the tax would be neither regressive nor progressive. If the tax on the wealthy driver was over $10,000, that would be progressive. But it's worse, because wealthy drivers are going to be driving electric cars. We need a comprehensive system to be equitable. Let's all favor replacing the state gas tax with a state means-based progressive road use charge. And so I want to see more flexibility. I mean, I changed my words. We need to change our thinking. And that's also true of the staff. The staff need, and of course, the staff cannot get rid of the gas tax by themselves, but that they can say that's what they favor. They are going along with state policy, which assumes a road use charge by 2030. We're phasing out internal combustion engine cars by 2035. So the state there is rational thinking going on.
Thank you, and that concludes the public commenters.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Salas.
I don't want to torture anybody with more time here, but I do want to end the meeting with how it started, and that's great gratitude to State Senator Tony Atkins, as well as our new Assembly member, David Alvarez, for securing $30 million in funding that have helped the city of Chula Vista get into a partnership with SDSU and Southwestern College. Finally, we're going to have a 4-year university presence in Chula Vista, and San Diego State is moving their cinematic arts program to the city of Chula Vista, and it's just the first step in many more programs that will be coming to the University Center. It was great for the city of Chula Vista, and thank you again, Tony Atkins and David Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. And now we have the birthday boy. Yes, go ahead, Gustavo from Caltrans, Gallardo. Mr.
Thank
Gallardo.
you, Chair Blakespeare. I don't feel like a boy anymore. But I wanted to highlight that over the past few weeks, we've been hit with a lot of fires throughout the county. And the excellent work by all the emergency responders, including CAL FIRE, Caltrans, and CHP responding to these fires, and all the preparation that many people don't know that happens before the fire season, where our maintenance crews go and remove dead brush and combustible material from the sides of the road. And that minimizes the damage that happens when these fires happen. Throughout these fires that were contained quickly by CAL FIRE, we've had to do some closures together with the CHP. We've had portions of 94 and 188 closed, the Tecate border crossing closed for a couple of days. And we've also had some damage on State Route 94. Our crews had to replace some burn signs and guardrail. All of this happening working in unimaginable conditions of heat and humidity. So I want to thank all of our crews for being out there. The same crews that today and tomorrow are performing now storm patrol. I'm getting reports as we're meeting here of heavy rain in the East County. There's debris on portions of I-8 and State Route 94. So our crews will be performing storm patrol, looking for flooding, responding to incidents. It is true that people forget here how to drive when it's raining, and we see a higher number of collisions. So what we want to ask the public is to keep to slow down in these conditions, to keep our workers and emergency responders safe. We cannot afford to lose any workers or any emergency responders, and that's the best birthday present that I could get. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are actually at the end of this meeting. So the next meeting is September 23rd at 9 a.m. and we are officially adjourned. Have a great weekend, everybody.